Good afternoon, Dr. Brady and classmates. My name is Milton Wilson. I go to Georgia Military College. My major is psychology, and I'll also be pursuing an associate's in science and psychology and be transferring to Kennesaw State University in fall 2020. So this afternoon, I will be talking about a non-profitable organization called NAMI. And that acronym stands for the National Alliance Mental Illness Association. And basically, that association is one of the largest mental health organizations in the United States that is basically dedicated into building better lives for individuals and families with a mental illness. Now, essentially, based on their um, their impact within the community, I will essentially be talking about the history of NAMI, what is a mental illness, and the purpose as an organization. So I'm just going to dive in on all three of those concepts. And the first one I will be talking about is the history of NAMI. Sir, so the first thing about NAMI is that it all started in the year of 1977 in Madison, Wisconsin. And basically, this whole process started based on two mothers that is named Beverly Young and Harriet Shelter. And basically, these two mothers each had a son, and both of the sons essentially was diagnosed with a subtype of dementia called schizophrenia. And based on their experiences on taking care of both of these children and noticing the stipulations and being overwhelmed, they were just like, why? Why is society, American society, like this? Why can't certain people have the certain resources, or why do certain people or families don't have certain treatment for people who have a mental health disorder or a mental illness? So what they did was they essentially sought out different people around the city of Madison, Wisconsin, my bad, that basically are going through the same experiences, not just schizophrenia, just like it could be probably had different disorders such as PTSD or ADHD or bipolar disorder. They basically and they basically they formed a meeting called basically a national conference that held like 75 people that had the same concerns as these two mothers did. And originally the the national conference was called the National Alliance of Mentally Ill. That was basically what was going to be the whole title of what it was supposed to be today. But they got a problem with the mental health board. People disagreed because the name didn't start in first person. So they changed it to the National Alliance of Mental Illness in 2005, and it's still the name of it today. And that's just a little brief history on how it all started. And so the second thing I'm gonna talk about, and which is the most important part, obviously, is there's what they specialize in. That is helping people with a mental illness how to cope or seek out treatment or educate them on why they have a mental illness. And just pip. And basically, a mental illness is basically a big umbrella filled with certain disorders that an individual can have that are, and usually people with a mental illness, they usually are affected based upon their mood. Stop. Based on their mood, behavior, and their thinking and their way of thinking, such as schizophrenia, which it affects it all aspects of an individual, which is their thinking, distorted realization within outside the environment, um, behavior. They can get bipolar. One day they are mad, one day they are sad, one day they are happy. It can go all over the place, and then their mood. Obviously, the main one, depression. And when I was taking psychology, I asked one of my professors who teaches at GMC at the Augusta campus, named Dr. Ward, and I asked her, how can people get a mental illness or a mental health disorder? And she basically said, not in exactly her own words, is that there are two ways a person can be affected with a mental illness, and that is, one, it can be genetically inherited, and two, it can be affected environmentally. So like, and basically the difference between the two is that genetically inheritance of a disorder is basically, obviously, based on past experiences from different individuals that are part of the family tree, is basically passing on that disorder to a certain individual that is still living to this day. So it can be temporarily, or it could be a lifelong disorder. Whereas environmentally, it's basically a trigger event, like such as a car accident, can affect someone's not only physicality, it can affect their mental, their way they're thinking, the way they feel about themselves, such as paranoia. They are paranoid to drive a car. And yeah. And then what else? Oh yeah. The difference between certain disorders that are mentally ill, and the main ones, is mood disorder and anxiety disorder. And basically the two are basically what I just said. When you're dealing with a mood disorder, you're basically, a person is going through withdrawals from a long time ago, or their brain is not functioning the way it's supposed to be throughout the years of their growth of development. Whereas an anxiety disorder is basically, it can be temporarily, such as like they can get phobias, or they can get what else can they get? Oh yeah, same paranoia, but like it's temporarily, it's not as tense as a mood disorder. So and basically when you're dealing with an anxiety disorder, it's basically affected based on a certain trigger event that either that's present or in the past. Whereas mood disorder, it happens, it flows like within they grow, within their development as a person. And the third thing is why the treatment, basically, the whole purpose of treatment. There are 3 different ways a person can get treatment, and that is psychotherapy, that is psychosocial therapy, and medication. Period. I can't really explain certain medication on a certain disorder because like that's so much to know. But for psychotherapy, there's like the most common one that people usually use if they are a therapist or a social worker, and that is called CBT, and that stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And basically that's a talk therapy. And that talk therapy is basically talking to an individual with a mental illness about certain key points within their past that they've been through, as from a child, from an adolescence, and as well as adult. And they basically try to reverb of what they're trying to think pretend like that is not true about their self or what they're thinking about. That's basically what CBT is the whole process about. And psychosocial therapy, there's so many psychosocial therapies, but the only popular one that people use is called self therapy, which is like mind, body, and soul. And that's not really a common one. That's kind of like an alternative for CBT. They basically correlate together, such as like when you do the CBT at home, they practice psychosocial therapy, the mind, body, and soul. And examples of psychosocial therapy is meditation, yoga, a sport. And basically what the whole purpose of the therapy is doing is to basically ooze out their behavior, get their mind off a certain thing that they're thinking of. And those are basically the main treatments. And lastly, me concluding my my informative speech, I will be talking about basically their whole purpose. Their whole purpose as a association. Basically, NAMI's whole purpose of an association is to basically, one, seek out people who are suffering from mental illness and try to educate them and put them in support groups of what they need to help them cope from what they are going through. And basically help them realize that that they accept them for who they are and who they is, and they're basically patient for who they are as well. And that's basically a whole summarization of how they is as a community within all 48 states. And that's really about it. And that concludes my little presentation about the association. I'm glad that I present this to you. I'm a little nervous, as you can see, because this is my first time actually performing certain things like this. I thought this could be worse, but it wasn't. Once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and there will be more information in the description about NAMI, about the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I hope y'all have a good afternoon.